All right, Sergio Mora is joining me. And Sergio, I'm going to start this by giving you a round of applause. And I don't do this often. I don't give you props, sometimes just out of spite, but I don't give you props often. But as our friend Todd Grisham mentioned on the broadcast for the AJ Dubois fight, right after Daniel Dubois picked up a titanic stoppage win over Anthony Joshua, that you, Sergio Mora, were one of, if not the only one out there that picked Danny Dubois to win this fight. You picked him to win by knockout. You did it first, I think, at the end of our broadcast last week of the Canelo Alvarez Edgar Berlanga fight. And I remember I snickered at you a little bit, Sergio. I kind of sneered at you a little bit because I just didn't think that Dubois could face the kind of power that AJ brought to the ring. But turns out Dubois couldn't handle or AJ couldn't handle the power that Dubois brought to the ring. Did that fight go as you thought it was going to go?
I hate to sound like an arrogant former champion that just picked the biggest upset in boxing, one of the biggest upsets in this year at least. But yes, I did. Yes, I did. I thought this fight was going to go similar to Foreman Lyle. If you remember that, they're both beating the hell out of each other, going down. That's the way I imagined this fight. I mean, I didn't want to say it because it was going to be a little bit too pompous. But within my inner circle, I told you guys, I thought Dubois was going to knock out Joshua. And I know Joshua is a matchroom fighter. He's a DAZN fighter. And, it's tough for me to say that openly. But look, I get paid to give you my opinion, to be honest as possible, and tell you exactly what's in my heart. And anyone that has those interviews, and I did several of them, I said, I think Dubois is going to win. He has momentum with that Ergovich fight, momentum with Miller. I think Joshua's been calculated and maneuvered back to the top carefully. And, there's a lot of things that I've already experienced with Joshua calling his fights in the last 6 years. I've seen the look in his eye when he got in trouble with Andy Ruiz, not once but twice. I've seen the look in his eye with Kubrat Pulev when he's hitting him. Like I like to say, man, once that chin gets cracked, it's hard to put it back together again. The confidence can come back, the strength, the looks, the appearance, but the heart, man, the heart doesn't come back. You can't put a Band-Aid on it and expect to be a courageous fighter again. It doesn't work that way in boxing. It doesn't work that way in boxing. So once that confidence gets clipped and you want to try to mold it and melt it and iron it back together, weld it back together again, it's not going to work. It's going to be strong in other places, but not where it cracked.
All right, so let's unpack what happened in this fight. The first round, both guys come out, a lot of energy in the building, 96,000 people at Wembley Stadium. And Anthony Joshua gets knocked down right away. First round gets knocked down by a big right hand. I mean, I thought it was a good right hand. I didn't think it was a great right hand from Daniel Dubois, but it was enough to put Joshua on the canvas. Second round, same thing happens. Anthony Joshua takes another right hand and goes down. The third round, did he officially go down in the third round? He hit the canvas, and for a moment, it looked like the referee was waving the fight off, didn't it? Because when Joshua went down, the referee waved his hands above his head. And that's usually the signal for fights off. If a guy slips on the canvas, the signal is usually down lower, right? Like almost like a baseball umpire saying safe. That didn't happen. The referee put his hands in the air, but it turns out he was just calling it a slip. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. Either way, Joshua looked like he was in trouble at the end of the third round. Fourth round.
Hold on. Let me say, look, the way referees are supposed to wave off a fight is like this, over the head. He did that. When it's a slip, he does it down here. Big difference. I mean, it's a universal language. The referee did this. Even I got up. I'm the only one watching my fight here. And I said, what? What the F is going on? And then I realized he meant to do this. So that's the mix-up there. It was the referee's fault.
Sergio, look, I'm glad the fight continued beyond that. I think the referee would have been within his rights to stop it right there. Because
No. Are you kidding me? 96,000 emails would have been in your computer. No way. You're crazy.
Look, I just said, I'm glad that the fight continued. But I do think it wouldn't have been preposterous to have the fight stopped in that moment. Anyway, fast forward ahead, and Anthony Joshua comes back to life. He lands one big right hand that looked like it wobbled the legs of Dubois. And you heard Frank Warren, the promoter of Daniel Dubois, say after the fact, like, I was worried in that moment. So AJ, right after he rocks Dubois, he comes in and goes for the kill. The same way we've seen AJ do it so many times during his professional career. He comes in, he throws right hands, and then all of a sudden, another counter right hand from Dubois comes in and puts Anthony Joshua down and keeps him down for the 10 count. Sergio, we've seen AJ knocked out before. The Andy Ruiz fight, specifically, we have never before seen him knocked out like that, where he's on the canvas and can't get up.
Face first.
Face first on the canvas.
That is when you know the fight is over. You don't even need to count. But look, let me just interrupt you there. You must have read my tweets. I live tweet during fights, right?
During fights.
And let me just tell you, when AJ, I think it was a right hand, landed on Dubois, I was starting to text that Joshua was going to knock down Dubois because I knew both of them. Well, I thought both of them were going to go down, and I was already going to take. And now AJ is going to, knock down Dubois, but he went for the kill. This is what happens when you knock down a fighter early, Mannix. When you get knocked down early, it could be a gift and a curse. I've knocked down opponents early in fights, believe it or not. No, I've been knocked down early in fights, and then I come back to stop them or drop them. Plenty of times, not just with Jacobs. This is what happens with fighters. Whenever they drop someone early, they think they're going to stop them. They don't think it's going to go the distance. They forget about the 12 rounds. They go for the kill, and it ends up biting them in the butt. That's exactly how this fight was going to go for Dubois, I thought. But, man, the youth, the momentum, the power, and the vulnerable chin that I kept talking about with Joshua, it just caught up to him, man. You can't keep going to the well, like they say. It's going to dry out. It dried out for Joshua. Age caught up to him. Knockouts caught up to him. The big stage, believe it or not, the big stage caught up to him because it gets comfortable. You get good. You get comfortable under those bright lights, and you think, this is where I'm home. And then the young, hungry lion that is not accustomed to it, man, that's all he's been dreaming about for 30 years, or for 20 years or whatever it is. And then when it's his time to shine, hey, man, there's a new lion in town. It happens all the time, man. It happens all the time in boxing. But whenever you're hitting a certain stage of comfort in your career, I mean, tens of millions of dollars like Joshua has, there's only a certain amount of chances you're going to get. And like I said earlier in this interview, they calculated, they maneuvered him back to the top carefully. Shout out to Matchroom and Eddie Hearn. But you could only do that a certain amount of times in the championship level before you get knocked out by a young hungry lion with momentum, Mannix, momentum. Dubois had Ergovich undefeated and a big bad boy, Big Mouth and Miller. Stopped them both. That's momentum on the championship level. So even though he wasn't a world champion, he knocked out two guys that were supposed to be heavyweight champions, and now he beat a former champion. The world is in Dubois' hands.
Yeah, the matchmaking did strike me early in that fight, just sort of jumped to mind because his opponents, since that loss to Usyk, have been carefully curated, right? Like Jermaine Franklin, not a puncher, smaller guy. Robert Helenius replaced Dillian Whyte. Robert Helenius was washed at that point. You had his last fight against Otto Wallen, who is a good fighter, but not a power puncher.
And Franklin.
That's what I said first. I said Franklin first.
Okay, sorry.
Otto Wallen, the last pure boxer, and then he kind of gets lucky when Ngannou puts Fury on the canvas and makes himself relevant in the heavyweight division. But Ngannou was not a boxer, and that fight went exactly like I thought that fight was going to go. So here he is, 4 wins in a row, but he's never faced an opponent like Daniel Dubois, not since the losses to Usyk. And you're right, Dubois came in just brimming with confidence. 96,000 fans. What, 75, 80 of them were there for Anthony Joshua? Like, Daniel Dubois is a Brit, but he was walking into the lion's den, and not for one moment during that fight did he look uncomfortable on that stage. In fact, he looked way more comfortable than AJ. He came out, Sergio, pressing on that front foot. He was throwing that long jab out there, which has been a weapon throughout his career. He wasn't afraid to throw that straight right hand. Meanwhile, AJ, for the first time in the last 3 or 4 fights, he was fighting as a back foot fighter. Like, he was backing up the entire time, and you can't get any kind of leverage on your right hand if you're doing that. In fact, the only time he had success was when he basically said in the 4th round, fuck it, I'm just going to throw a right hand and let it go and see what happens. And then he clipped Dubois, but then turned around the corner and got clipped right back. So I think you're 100% right on how AJ's revival maybe was, I don't want to say manufactured. That's a little bit too strong.
I could say it.
In a way, it was manufactured.
It was matchmaking at its finest. That's manufactured, whether you like the word or not.
I'll use it. But it was definitely manufactured more than Daniel Dubois' revival was. Like, Daniel Dubois had to come back against real fighters. He had to come back against Jarrell Miller. He had to come back against Filip Hrgović. These are top 10 heavyweights that he had to beat to get on the stage. Anthony Joshua didn't beat a top 10 heavyweight in the last year or so. So I think we saw, like you said, one fighter that had momentum and the other one that just had some wins going into the fight.
Don't you ever call a professional fighter real fighters? They're real fighters if they're in the ring. See, you use manufactured the right way, but then you use real fighters. They were real fighters, Mannix, but they weren't real championship fighters that are on the big stage. That was the difference. The fact that they weren't the opponents that are going to push back. They're the ones that are they're gonna show up. They're going to give you a little pushback, but they're not going to really try to win. You, at this stage of your career, when you've already been stopped, you've been with the elite, you've been with big punchers, you can't be fighting the Otto Wallins of the world. I mean, Wallin is a good fighter, but you can't be, fighting guys like that and the others, because we already know what they are on the big stage. They're not championship caliber opponents. Meanwhile, Dubois was beating championship caliber opponents. Miller was on the championship level. He had a chance for the gold mine, and Joshua blew that. And Hrgović, from the amateurs as a medalist, all the way being groomed for greatness as the next guy in line, which I thought he was going to be. And Triple D comes out and detonates those plans as well. That's the beauty of boxing, man. That's the beauty of boxing. And I love when young, hungry champions, even if it's against my benefit, because let's keep it real, a DAZN fighter got knocked out right now. A cash cow got knocked out right now. But I love, Mannix. This is what I live for, man. When an underdog, which I've been all my life, gets all the glory, man, because all the hard work in the gym, all the blood, all the guts, everything you prayed for, everything that you dreamed of, everything that you wanted, you did it on the biggest stage. 96,000 fans. Forget 15,000, 20,000, 96,000. Come on, man. It doesn't get bigger than that. Dreams come true, and you know what? Triple D deserves it.
All right, something else you'll love, and you probably did love in real time, was the coaching performance of Don Charles. I thought Don Charles in the corner was brilliant in this fight. There was a lot of BS around Don Charles during the week, some conspiracy theories floating around. I was texting people during the week asking, like, is there any kind of rift here? And like, no, Don is sick. Like, he is sick. He doesn't want to be around his guy while he's sick for stupid ass fight week activities. Like, there was no rift between Don Charles and Dan Dubois. And I think you saw in that fight why they are such an excellent team. The game plan of Don Charles was the right one. He said he had him going out, pressuring AJ, letting that right hand go, forcing AJ to be a back foot fighter. I'm not sure if you caught it, Sergio. In the third round, after AJ got up and when they went to the corner, I think it was after the third round, Don Charles said to Dubois, don't let this guy back in the fight. Like, just gave him a stern warning. Like, do not let this guy back in the fight. And sure enough, into that fourth round, Dubois went out and got the job done. I thought he had a really good night, and that is great evidence of what good chemistry is between trainer and fighter.
I missed it. I'm sorry to say I missed it. I was too busy tweeting my fans during the fight. But let me tell you something. If that's what he did, and I'll watch it again, then that's how legends are born. That's how stars are born. And you know what? All the fighters get all the attention. I make it a point when I do my telecast to give the trainers attention. But absolutely, that was his Angelo Dundee moment. You're blowing it, son. You're blowing it. Do not let this guy off. Keep him on his back foot. That's exactly what you want to hear when you're facing a puncher. Now, mind you, it was puncher versus puncher, but you got a young, youthful puncher with momentum against a fragile former champion that's been knocked out and questionable with the heart. Do not let him off the hook. And that is something that needs to be not only implemented in the gym, but implored in the corner. You need to remind your fighter, man. You need to tell him right there in those 60 seconds, everything you trained for the last 6 months, you need to put that in 60 seconds. You need to really, not only telling them the right words and keeping it short because it's only a minute, but you got to say it with feeling, with momentum, Teddy Atlas style, the fireman speech. Are we firemen? That's what gets young, quiet fighters like Dubois. They don't show that much emotion. They don't really have that much passion as far as outside the ring. That's how you get them burning inside, man. You need a vocal person like that, an animated coach, someone that gets you out there. And then there's fighters that don't need that. There's fighters that do not need it because they have it naturally. I love it, man. It was a bravo performance. I can't wait to rewatch it because that's going to be a pivotal point in this fight. I mean, Dubois followed the game plan that was that was implemented by Charles, and I love hearing the words put to the game plan, to the strategy, because then you've seen what they try to blossom in camp and what came to fruition. It's a beautiful thing when it happens.
Yeah, just to be accurate, to correct myself, it was after the fourth round. Joshua goes down in the first, third, and fourth, but I believe it was between the fourth and fifth rounds where Don Charles said, "Don't let this guy off the hook," and then the fifth round comes around and AJ gets knocked out. So fifth round knockout to correct myself is for Daniel Dubois. The Dubois revival, Sergio, is such a remarkable story because even though you can say that he had a busted orbital bone against Joe Joyce, and that's why he didn't get off a knee, he quit against Usyk. He did. He quit. He took a jab, took a knee, went down, and didn't get up. And we can talk about the belt line punch and should that have been ruled a clean punch or not. But the reality is, in a heavyweight championship fight, Dubois took a knee and did not get up. That kind of stuff is tough to recover from. But he's done that, and he's done that by digging deep in pretty high-level fights. Like he was losing the first part of that Jarrell Miller fight. Remember that fight over in Saudi Arabia? He was losing the first few rounds of that. Dug deep, found a way to get a knockout. Hrgovic, he ate some big right hands against Hrgovic in the first couple of rounds, rallied, recovered, and stopped the boogeyman at that time in the heavyweight division. Now he goes up against AJ and takes the fight to one of, if not the biggest puncher in the heavyweight division. Like, what do you make of this revival? It's one of the great stories of the last couple of years. And I think, and our friend Adi Oladipo referenced this in the ring, this clearly makes Dubois, I shouldn't say clearly, like he is now the front runner for Fighter of the Year. I think Usyk, if he beats Tyson Fury twice, has a pretty strong case himself, but wins over Hrgovic and over AJ. In both fights, he would have been the underdog going in. I think those give him some pretty good credentials to be Fighter of the Year.
He'll be mentioned. I'll be surprised if he wins. But look, to put a bow on everything you just said, yeah, you're absolutely right. Everything in boxing is moving your chess pieces in the right direction. And whenever a fighter, and you said the word quit, so that's why I'm bringing up the mighty Q word. When a writer could say it, then a fighter could say it. Yes, he quit. He quit against Joe Joyce as well. He quit against Joe Joyce.
Look, you've seen broken orbital bones though before.
I'm talking now, Chris Mannix. I'm just going off the consensus of the critics and this former champion. So silence. But then again, on the flip side, Anthony Joshua, quote unquote, quit against Andy Ruiz. Once you see that, and I tweeted about this before the fight started. Once a fighter gives in or resigns or looks for a way out, quit. Once, it's easier to do it the second time around. We were going to find out who is the legitimate fighter that deserves another chance in this fight between two guys that are questionable when it comes to their heart. And we just saw it. I'm not saying that Joshua it wasn't a real punch. He could have continued. No, he got knocked out. He got beat up, he got battered, and he got knocked out by the younger, fresher, stronger fighter. That's it. It wasn't a quitting. It wasn't a question in his heart. He just got knocked out and beat by the man that was supposed to win tonight. And when nights like that happen, a new star is born. AJ had his time in the light. And it happens all the time with the greatest heavyweights and the greatest fighters in the world. That time comes when the next guy in line comes. Sometimes it's great and it pans out, like when Muhammad Ali left, Sugar Ray Leonard came. But Sugar Ray Leonard wasn't a heavyweight. Larry Holmes came. Larry Holmes, kind of like the Dubois, does all his talking in the ring. He could potentially be great. He has the size, he has the power, but you need more than that to be a star. But this is a great first step for Dubois and Team Dubois, not only to celebrate, but they did it on the biggest stage possible, man. That's a dream come true. So all credit to him, and he deserves his flowers and everything that he's going to get on the way forward.
And look, he is the present of the heavyweight division as a heavyweight champion. He is also the future of the division, Sergio. Look around at the guys at heavyweight. They're all mid to late 30s. They're all one or two fights away from being retired. Fury, Usyk, AJ, go down the list. Jarrell Miller, Andy Ruiz. Like, these guys are in the last chapters of their career. Right now, Daniel Dubois is just entering his prime. Now, he's been on a roller coaster ride of a career. It's probably been 3 careers, from prospect to guy recovering from Joyce knockout, to guy recovering from Usyk knockout, to the guy we saw on Saturday. But he is the future of the heavyweight division, in addition to being a big star in the present. So we know he's got his eye on whatever happens December 21st between Usyk and Fury. Their rematch is going to happen. He's going to want a piece of whoever wins that fight. What about AJ? Right after the fight, Sergio, he said he'd be back. I don't know if I see that. Like, he obviously can. He's still popular, can still make some money. But this will now be the third time that he's had to rebuild. And it's one thing to do it after a fight against Ruiz when you're in your 20s still. It's another thing to do it after back-to-back loss to Usyk, who is arguably, the number one pound-for-pound fighter in the world. But now you just got knocked out by Daniel Dubois. You're 34 years old. Do you really, if you're Anthony Joshua, want to do the same thing you did after the Usyk losses? Do you really want 2 or 3 Otto Wallins or Jermaine Franklins to get back on top? But if you do, do you go, what do you go into? Like, I saw Eddie Hearn say after the fight, there was a rematch clause. You really want to do a rematch with this guy? Like, that wasn't competitive at all, except for 10 seconds in the 5th round. That was not a competitive fight. I would make AJ a huge underdog if you did the rematch. What do you think of the future of Anthony Joshua?
It's not looking bright anymore. I mean, he went from being one of the brightest stars in boxing, one of the greatest stories. He made boatloads of money, and that's a career. That's a career. What are you talking? I mean, for anyone saying what do you do now? I mean, he's in his mid-30s now. He had the dream career that everyone wishes to have. So we're just watching a fighter, a world champion, a star, dim down in his brightness. That's it. There's nothing that he can do. I mean, he can try to come back. I mean, we see it over and over in boxing where a champion loses his title, comes back with that shows greatness. He did it 3 times, man. That's incredible. I don't think we'll see it 4th time. I don't think we'll ever see Joshua win another world championship again. No matter how calculated you try to maneuver him back to the top, it's just like Floyd Mayweather Jr. says, if you don't have this and you don't have this, you don't have this, you're not going to make it. He came a long way with people questioning this and people questioning this. We definitely know he's smart, but he came a long way with what he had, from Olympic gold medal to everything I just mentioned. So I just think there's no shame there, man. Whatever critic is going to try to, knock AJ down or write bad about him, fuck you. Because this is exactly what we dream of, man. As fighters, I get pissed off because now I'm a broadcaster, right? So now I got to be the guy pointing fingers. No. Sometimes you got to just mind your business and shut up. Shut up. That and honor greatness when you saw it. I'm not saying he was a great fighter, but he had a great career. All right, so I got to applaud that.
Sergio, I agree. The question is the career over? Is my
yes.
You think it's over?
On the championship level. On the championship level, filling out arenas, yes. And I think if he ever comes back to fight another up-and-coming, young, strong fighter, like, say he fights the guy that just knocked out Big Anderson,
Bacoli? No.
No, hold on. This is the only way to redeem yourself if you're an old champion, by fighting another young, up-and-coming, scary guy.
You want Anthony
Joshua? Hey, that's my opinion, Chris Mannix. All right? If you want to regain,
Bacoli's not young.
Well, whatever. Bacoli's on momentum, and that'll be a hell of a fight. Can you imagine that fight? Can you imagine Bacoli, Anthony Joshua in Africa, somewhere in Africa? Can you imagine that fight?
You're worried, though. You're talking about Joshua's chin before a Dubois fight. Like, what's his chin going to do against Bacoli, who might be top 3 biggest punchers in the division?
What's his chin going to be like against Zhilei Zhang if they happen to fight in China? It's just you can't put it back together again, Chris Mannix. Come on. That's the beauty of boxing. That's the beauty. That's why it's beautiful brutality. Like I like to say, hey, it is what it is, man. Now, who's next? We know who's next. Dubois.
The reason, Sergio, I think that it might be time to call it a day is that I just don't think mentally he's all the way into it anymore. Like, people have compared, that we're doing this all week, the AJ that we saw beat Klitschko versus the AJ we had seen up until last night, Saturday night. Yes, I think AJ's a better boxer now. But the AJ that fought Klitschko fought with a recklessness and fought with a fire that this version doesn't have anymore, right? Like, AJ was swinging for the fences against Klitschko. In fact, Sergio, I don't think this version of AJ beats that version of Klitschko. I just don't think he has it it in him to, kind of fight back in the way he did against Vladimir back in 2017. Just a very different guy. And you can speak to this better than I can, but when you lose that kind of fire, look, we saw it on a lesser scale with Danny Garcia last week in his fight against Erislandy Lara. Like, if you're just not in it, if you're not willing to kind of sell out and win when the going gets tough, you should probably get out of the game.
It happens to a lot of punchers once they get knocked out once and then twice. I'm talking about big punchers, guys that are known for the knockouts. Once they get knocked out and they lose their invincibility, it happens all the time. They start boxing more to extend their career. A good example that I like to mention is Fernando Vargas. I watched him coming up. I looked up to him. He was wrecking everybody, youngest champion at 21 years old. But then he started getting careful once he started getting knocked out. Arturo Gatti is another example of that. He was blood and guts warrior. Towards the end, he wanted to try to start boxing. A lot of punchers. Golovkin towards the end of his career. He was a wrecking machine, scary. And he started using the jab and back foot. And what do we see with Joshua today? Back foot, jabbing, trying to set up their right hand, be more calculating and careful than devastating and a ferocious finisher. Watch this, a composed and ferocious finisher. So it happens all the time. And that just goes to show it comes with age. It comes with losing your invincibility. And it comes with just what's the word that I'm looking for, where your ignorance is bliss, where you think I'm the baddest man on the planet until someone proves you different. And then it's like, oh, maybe I should become the smartest man on the planet now if I want to stay in the game.
All right, Sergio. Well, congratulations on your correct prediction. Well done. And also congratulations on working your Twitter account into this conversation like 13 times. So,
hey, listen, man, I'm a man of the people. So when I'm not live working the fight, I'm live on the Twitter. All right, follow me at LatinSnake_.com, baby. Let's go.